I say CPAC, you say fight back. CPAC? CPAC? When I say CPAC, you say fight back. CPAC? CPAC? When I say CPAC, you say fight back. CPAC? 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 Awesome, awesome, awesome. I just want to get y'all vocal cords warmed up tonight. I know it's cold out there, but I'm happy y'all was able to make it. So my name is Michael Sampson. I am from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm with the Jacksonville Community Action Committee, and I'm here in Chicago to be out here for the refounding of the National Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression.
And my name is Jasmine Salas, co-chair of the Chicago Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression, and the Chicago Boricua Resistance. How are folks doing tonight? Woo. So thank you all so much for coming out with us tonight. You know, I'm sure folks are excited for the refounding of the National Alliance, an organization, a mass defense organization in this moment of political repression, of black identity extremism. You know, we need to come together right now, and that's what this conference is about. So make some noise if you're ready to do that over the weekend. You want to give it? Okay. So I want to introduce our first speaker, but before I do, I want to make note. Hopefully everybody here is on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. We're actually live streaming this conference right now from the, yeah, I know, right? We are in 2019. From the Chicago Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression Facebook page. So everybody take out your phone, share it. You know, this is a national conference. We want to make sure folks know what's going on right now. All right, so our first speaker. So who here heard about the teachers who went on strike? It is my honor to introduce our first speaker, the Vice President of the Chicago Teachers Union, Ms. Stacey Davis Gates. Make some noise. That's awesome. Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the Jacqueline Vaughn Hall and the house that Karen Lewis built. And I would like to welcome you to Chicago, in a place where coalition building, movement building seems to be on the forefront of our city. Thank you for being here. You know, every time I get up in front of a group of people who are fighting for justice, who are fighting for equity, I kind of get a little nervous and I lose my words because I just think it's so important to make sure that the people who attend events like this, the people who are organizing, who are clear about justice and equity, that they always leave a place feeling better about why they have committed to fighting for justice, fighting for equity. And so I think that's a big deal. There is so much in our world, in our country, in the cities and the states that we reside that, seek to take our breath away, to demoralize us, to make us think that this fight, that this movement that we are building isn't worth it. And so it's most important that the people who are on the forefront, who are on the front lines, know that their work is not in vain. That you know that justice is not some theory that we find in books or in think pieces, but that justice is something that comes with our humanity. And so if I hear, as I just heard, that our black identity is extreme, it's not extreme. It is our birthright. What is extreme is white supremacy. So listen, our fights are the same. You know, our fight at the Chicago Teachers Union has manifested in a fight for educational justice. But the injustice is a part of our society because white supremacy says that the black children and the brown children and the poor children who populate the Chicago public schools do not deserve the bare minimum. And so something that the leadership of this union did in 2010 was prioritize the humanity of the students that are before us on a daily basis and said that they deserve more. And then they organized for more internally. And then they pushed back in a city that was okay with giving less to those children. And then we changed our constitution at the Chicago Teachers Union to reflect this movement, right? That after us, the legacy of this union, the charge of this union will be to always fight for the justice and the humanity of the children who are in our classrooms. So what I want us to do here today and this entire tonight and this weekend is to love on each other a little bit because we understand the struggle. What I want us to do with each other this weekend is to be a little curious with each other because these are safe spaces. What I want us to do is to reaffirm our commitment to this fight, to reaffirm our commitment to each other and to community building. Because if we can't build community with one another, if we can't love on each other and support each other, then our movement is in vain. So take some time, give out some hugs, shake some hands, lift somebody's spirit a little bit. Give them the gas that they need to continue to confront a world where it's okay for Donald Trump to put our children in cages. A world where it's okay to close schools down on children who need them. A world where it's okay to kill children, but because you have a badge, it's all right. A world where it's okay to continue to stuff children into classrooms and offer them nothing except for less. We need each other. We need our understanding, we need our love, we need our grace, we need that humility. Movement building is tough work. It is hard work. So take this weekend and find your friend, find your heart, and treat each other like family. Welcome to the Chicago Teachers Union, a house built by black women who believed in the humanity of black, brown, and poor children. Thank you so much.
Give her a round of applause. CT who? CT who? CT who? CT who? Awesome, awesome. Give her one more round of applause. What an awesome speech. And we're definitely thankful to the brothers and sisters for CTU for letting us use their beautiful Union Hall here tonight. So our next speaker, he was one of the founding members of the Brown Berets. He's an active organizer in Los Angeles, organizing in the Chicano community with the Community Service Organization. So everybody give a round of applause to Mr. Carlos Montes.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. That's people united will never be defeated. You all, come on, let's hear it. It's awesome to be here with all you, feeling the energy, the solidarity. I was in L.A., California last week. Believe it or not, it was 90 degrees. But I feel the warmth and the heat today, so let me get into it. I want to express all my greetings to all of you here, but especially the families who have lost their loved ones to victims of police killings, in which we have that in L.A. also. In L.A., the LAPD, the L.A. Sheriff's Department, continue to kill black and brown folks daily, and over 500 in the last several years. But we're fighting back. That's right. We're fighting back. We're demanding justice. We're demanding jail, killer cops, community control of the police. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Now, my family is originally from Mexico. I grew up in the border town of El Paso and Juarez. And we're a white supremacist, inspired by the words of Trump, came to El Paso, my old hometown, and killed, our community, massacred our community. We have to unite to demand an end to racist killings, right? Police killings and racist killings. Now, a little bit, I got involved in the civil rights movement, like many of you all. Many of you may be children of the civil rights movement. And got involved in the Chicano liberation movement. And like many of us, older comrades, and many of you know folks, we got beaten, we got arrested, we got shot at, many of us were killed. I was forced to go underground, and I was rearrested years later. But due to people like yourself, due to a grassroots campaign demanding freedom for all political prisoners, I'm able to speak here with you today. Yeah. So we have to demand freedom for all political prisoners in the United States. Yeah. Now, as the brother mentioned, I continue my activism today in the barrio of East LA, in Bow Heights, working with families who have been victims of police killings, against wars, and promoting public education. Also, we were on strike and supporting UTLA. Let's hear it for UTLA, CTU. And of course, we fight for immigrant rights and against the Trump attacks, like the deportations and incarcerations of Trump. We got to make sure we dump Trump, right? Now, one of the important things that I learned is to be in solidarity with oppressed nations throughout the world, which causes mass migration, poverty, and misery, whether it's Mexico, Africa, Asia, Latin America, right? And due to my involvement in that solidarity and also protesting at the Republican conventions and being vocal at denouncing the warmongers, the FBI raided my house a few years ago, arrested me on trumped-up charges. But again, the people like yourself demanding my freedom, I'm able to be here with you today. So, and I want to thank the organizations that were involved in that, the Stop FBI Repression Committee and labor organizations. And it is with that spirit of solidarity and fight against racist attacks, police killings, and state repression that I unite and support the refounding of the National Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression. Thank you very much. Let's hear it. All right.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido. El pueblo unido. Make some noise, y'all. So I forgot to mention when I was giving a plug for the Facebook stream that we also have hashtags for this event as well. So for all of my live tweeters in the audience, shout out to you. The hashtags are refounding NAARPR and hashtag free them all, right? Because we're trying to free all political prisoners, am I right? So up next, I would like to invite up Monique Sampson. Monique Sampson is an activist with SDS at University of North Florida, Jacksonville.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Let's start off with the chant. So when I say people, you say power. People? Power. People? Power. When I say worker, you say power. Worker? Power. Worker? Awesome, awesome. Like Jasmine said, my name is Monique Sampson, and I'm with Students for a Democratic Society, which is an on-campus activist group that has been leading the charge for student activism here in the United States. Over the last couple of years, SDS has been a militant force on campus for student organizing. From anti-war protests, to expelling Nazis, to standing with victims of campus police brutality, we've been on the front lines demanding justice by sitting in our president's offices, to marching across campus, to rallying with hundreds of students and community members for justice. We've come from Tampa Tallahassee, Wisconsin, Jacksonville, Utah, Minnesota, and many other cities in order to be here for this historic event. So we are here to stand with community members and help with the fight for justice for all. We are here as students to call for the refounding of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. We are here to be part of history. So the last few years, SDS has won so many victories and learned so many lessons. Let's go over some of them. So Jacksonville SDS rallied after a self-proclaimed Nazi threatened black students and community members. These white supremacists had the nerve to say that they were going to come to our campus, our domain, to rally. So we clapped back, and we got organized, and we organized a rally where we had hundreds and they had 4. Yeah, there's power in the people. So not only did we do that, but our campaign resulted in an increase in black enrollment, an increase in scholarships for black students, and that Nazi being expelled and banned from our school because there's power in the people. Come on, somebody. Not only that, but Tampa SDS rallied to demand protections for LGBTQ workers because no LGBTQ person should have to live in a world where they're persecuted for being who they are, because that ain't right, okay? Denver SDS took the fight straight to the enemy and confronted an ICE warden at his home to let him know that SDS demands that they close down those concentration camps. Let's call it what it is, concentration camps. SDSers in Texas rallied and marched to defend DACA so that undocumented students have the same rights that all students have, and they marched and let the administration know that if you come for one of us, you come for all of us, and we will stand together and fight. Students in Chicago marched against Trump when he wanted to have a rally here, of all places. They marched with thousands and shut Trump down because there's power in the people. Come on, somebody. So as we begin to contextualize our place in history, and as we do this, we realize that we must stand together in order to further the struggle for liberation for all. We have to stand hand in hand as we continue to make blows to a system that thinks that killing our people is okay. We have to stand hand in hand against a system that tells our youth that their lives don't matter. Not only do we have a duty to ourselves and the people that came before us, but the people that will come after us. We cannot give up at all. So here we are at the Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression with the privilege of being here with revolutionaries and people that have been leading the struggle for decades. This is a privilege to be here, and we thank you so much. But us being here this weekend is important because it shows this country, the belly of the beast, white supremacist America, that we will not give up and that we will stand hand in hand and continue to struggle so that we can achieve freedom and liberation in our lifetime. So when I say people, you say power. People. People. Thank you.
Hey, give her one more round of applause. That's my baby. Hey, when I say people, you say power. People. People. When I say people, you say power. People. People. Awesome, awesome. That was an awesome speech. Awesome speech, and she has a great last name. Give her one more round of applause. I just want folks to know that we're here for this epic occasion. We have over 28 states represented here tonight. Give yourself a round of applause. I know if I mention one, I have to mention all, so I'm going to quickly go through it. Anybody from Alabama in the house? Alabama represent? Birmingham? Or they going to be here tomorrow? All right, shout out to Alabama. Hey, California. California in the house. All right. Colorado. Connecticut. We got Florida in the house. Florida, say something. That's my state. That's my state. Florida represent. We got Georgia in the house. Of course, we got Indiana in the house. Indiana. Hey, Indiana, what's up, Indiana? We got Iowa in the house. Iowa. Kentucky. We got Kentucky in the house. Hey, what's up, Kentucky? Hey. I like it. I like it. I like it. Get that energy up. Awesome, awesome. We got Maryland in the house. Maryland, where you at? Maryland, I love you, Maryland. Massachusetts in the house. We got Massachusetts. We got Michigan in the house. We, of course, got Minnesota in the house. Minnesota, what's up? Wow, Minnesota rolled deep. Minnesota rolled deep. It's cold up there, but they rolled deep. Missouri, the Show Me State. Where y'all at? Missouri in the house. Hey, Missouri. We got New Jersey in the house. We got New York in the house. We got Ohio in the house. Pennsylvania, we got Oregon in the house. We got Rhode Island in the house, Tennessee. Hey, Texas, make some noise. We got Texas in the house. Yeah, that's the state right there, Texas. We got Utah in the house. Yeah, we got Washington in the house. Washington. Yeah, okay. We got another state that isn't considered a state yet, but it is. We got D.C. in the house. D.C. represent. All right, we got Wisconsin in the house. Last but not least, we got Illinois in the house. Illinois, Chicago, make some noise. Awesome, awesome. So our next speaker, representing Bayan USA. This person's an awesome activist, been in the movement for a long time and fighting for liberation and justice for the Philippines. So everybody give Bernadette Alorian a round of applause.
Ang tao, ang bayan! Ang tao, ang bayan! Ngayon ay lumalaban! Congratulations to the people of Chicago and all the freedom fighters in this room right now for the refounding of this important organization. We from the Philippines struggle for national liberation against imperialism, stand with the people of Chicago, the black and brown people of the United States and all over the world who are suffering under fascism. The struggle against fascism is a worldwide struggle. It makes sense that we are here with you because in the Philippines, fascism has presented an opportunity. Fascism is a sign of decay. It's a sign of desperation of the ruling class. No, we learned that from our dear friend Vladimir. No, he's in this room. Vladimir's in this room. No, he's everyone's friend. He's not just my friend. He's all of our friends. What else did Vladimir say? Vladimir said, "A nation can never be free if it oppresses other nations." So those of us here who are from the national liberation struggles of Puerto Rico, for Palestine, for the Philippines, the Kurdish struggle, those of us who are fighting, waging revolutions overseas for our national liberation stand here. It makes sense that we are together. It makes sense that we recognize this is a global, international, worldwide struggle. And we are one global class. We are one global class because fascism is a war of the rich against the poor. In a capitalist society, it's a war on the poor, and that is universal. For as long as this system is in place, we are all slaves. We are all slaves. Vladimir also said, when we aspire for freedom, it's not for the freedom of the slave owners. We want freedom for the slaves. And that's all of us. Those of us who are incarcerated, those of us who are attacked on a daily basis by the police, those of us who are living in neo-colonies, whose lands have been plundered by U.S. imperialism. It is an anti-imperialist struggle, brothers and sisters. So I'm going to teach you all a chant because we are all internationalists in this room. It is in Tagalog, and you only have to learn one word, and that just means down, or ibagsak meaning to crush, to break, no? So, say bag, sak. So that means to bring it down, or to topple down. So I'm going to say imperialismo. That means imperialism. No. Imperialismo. Imperialismo. Feudalismo. Feudalism, because this is also a war not only on the poor, but a war on the landless. Those of us whose lands have been stolen. Those of us who are without land, without housing, no, without property. Feudalismo. Bureaucrata capitalismo. Bureaucrata capitalismo. Bureaucrat capitalism. Because this is a war of the rich who are using the government to get even richer. Yeah. Bureaucrata capitalismo. Fascismo ng Estado. State fascism. And you say babagsak. Babagsak. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. We're internationalists. This is our language, no? Fascismo ng Estado. Fascismo ng Estado. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Give her one more round of applause. So our next speaker unfortunately couldn't be here with us, but she is a fighter. She is a liberation fighter. She organized here in Chicago, created a AAA Women's Committee. Just a few years ago, as some of y'all know, y'all rallied with her in fighting for justice for Rasmea in a politically charged, trumped up case against her in which the people in this room, people who fight for Palestinian liberation, fought for Rasmea as well, and we ended up putting the criminal government of Israel on trial instead of Rasmea being on trial. So what we do is, Rasmea was, an amazing person who ended up leaving us a video address. So we're going to start that now.
Friends, comrades, and distinguished guests, my name is Rasmea Ouda. I would like to express my deep appreciation to the organizers of this important conference who invited me to participate tonight. It's special that your conference is being held in the heart of Chicago, the city that I love and that embraced me warmly, along with my family, friends, and supporters, and which was taken away from me more than 2 years ago in an unjust aggression. The streets and corners of the city witness our dreams and pains and nestled next to our activities, struggles, and protests. Chicago is a city that still to this day allows the willful police killing and torture of Black people and people of color. I know the important role that the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression is playing in confronting those crimes. It launched a powerful and effective campaign to demand a civilian police accountability council. Under the leadership of the Chicago Alliance, organizers also worked on important cases to achieve the release of wrongfully convicted women and men, in some cases freeing them from the grips of a life or a death sentence. Your conference is being held at a sensitive time with its theme to bring the fight for community control now to cities across the country that necessitates plugging into a wider network in order to expand the fight from Chicago to other cities. You all must exchange organizing experiences in order to continuously re-energize the national fight. From my organizing experience, the most important work is to inspire the community base to commit to join the fight for justice in every city across the country, at whatever capacity each city is able to commit. We struggle against all forms of racism and white supremacy, and we understand that the struggle is at the center of the fight against racist and political repression. Police crimes against black people in the U.S. resemble what we Palestinians experience at the hands of the Israelis. Your fight against racist law enforcement policies, similar to our Palestinian struggle against the military occupation. We support your demand for the CPAC, and our comrades will join you hand in hand until it becomes law. My first-hand experience of your country taught me that it doesn't value Black lives in the same way that it values the lives of others. And I know the Black people in the United States are fighting the most important fight in the entire world, the fight for liberation that has always inspired my Palestinian people's struggle. Our challenges are tough. Deconstructing racism and national oppression is not easy. Stopping police crimes will not be easy, but we shouldn't be frightened by the challenges. As long as we believe in the principles that we stand for and rise up together, we become stronger and more effective. Only then we can achieve our goals of refounding the National Alliance and bringing the fight across the country. We are with you, always by your side, and in solidarity with your struggle for equality, freedom, and the rights of the oppressed. Friends and comrades, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight my friend Frank Chapman. I know him as a brave and principled leader of the Chicago Alliance. Dear Comrade Frank, I will not forget your unequivocal solidarity with me since the beginning of my case, which is in its essence about the Palestinian cause. You weren't merely present at every hearing and speaking at every event and protest. You were also an important part of my defense committee, organizing, mobilizing, and motivating the people. You didn't allow any obstacle to prevent you from doing so. I appreciate you deeply for all that you have provided to support me. Words fail to express my gratitude for your loyalty. And also to my dear friend Angela, I'm honored and privileged that you stood by my side, supporting my rights both as an individual and a Palestinian. I was lucky to gain resilience and strength through you to continue fighting for justice, and when I face harsh conditions in my case. I would like to thank you, Angela, for your unqualified support. My people in Palestine and Jordan love you and send you their most beautiful greeting. You are a beloved friend, and we appreciate that you stand by our Palestinian cause wherever you go. In closing, I reiterate that the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression has been at the forefront of the struggle against the prison industrial complex. one of the fastest growing industries in the country, whose profit depend on the incarceration of more than 2 million people, mostly black people. It has successfully campaigned for the release of many persons who were falsely charged. This confirms that the theme of your national conference is urgent, necessary, and achievable. In order to affect change, we must join each other in resistance and together struggle against state violence and racism. We really can do it. Together we will achieve justice and freedom and create a better future for all of our communities throughout the country and beyond. I wish you the best luck during the rest of your conference and in achieving your stated goals for a more just future. Thank you. Good night.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Make some noise. How y'all doing out there? So my fellow co-MC, Michael Sampson, broke down a list of folks who are here from different states. But me living in Chicago, I know that there's some folks here from different sides of the city, right? So who is here from the south side? Make some noise. That's right. I see you, Soul. I see you. Who's here from the west side? The best side. Woo! Who's here? Uh-oh. Who's here from the north side? Make some noise. I will be a north sider in like a week, so I'm looking forward to meeting all of you guys. All right, so up next, I would like to invite up Armanda Shackelford, whose son, Gerald Reed, has been unjustly incarcerated for over 28 years for a crime he did not commit. And Armanda is going to tell us more about it. Armanda is a fighter. Make some noise and welcome her to the stage.
Mic's in a stand, or do you want to hold it? You want it in a stand? Yes.
Thank you.
You got it.
Yes, we are here. And we are here to have some fun. We are going to enjoy ourselves because the Alliance, oh, I'm sorry. The Alliance is the greatest organization that I know. They have done a tremendous job for Gerald Reed. They're fighting every day to free my son. And you know what? It's not just Gerald Reed, because Gerald Reed is not there by himself. He have made a lot of friends, and he have gotten a family while he's there. And whenever I get the chance to say something, I let everybody know that I'm not just talking for Gerald Reed. I'm talking for the men who don't have a family anymore. Some of them's family have died. One young man I met and talked, well, I haven't met him, but I've talked to him. His mother has had Alzheimer's, and she came to visit him, and she didn't even know who he was. That hurt, to know that my child has been kidnapped from me, taken away from me, and I don't know who he is. That's a problem for me, and I don't like that. I always feel if a man or woman say they didn't do the crime, don't make up stuff on them. Don't use other people to say he did it. I got proof that he did it, but you don't have no evidence. And in my son's case, they didn't have no evidence, none. And they tortured him into signing the confession that they typed up. That was cruel. And he's still in jail. He's still locked up in prison. His conviction was overturned. And you know how long that's been? Almost a year. Be a year next month. On the 21st of December, Judge Gaynor overturned his conviction. And the conviction was the statement that they tortured him into signing. That's the only thing they had against him. But you know what? He's still locked up. They won't even give him a bond for him to be free. But they offered him deals. But now I have a problem with that. If you say, I did it, and you got evidence to prove it, why are you offering me deals? I don't get that. If I did it, you shouldn't offer me a deal. You should want me to stay in prison because according to you, I did the crime without any evidence whatsoever. Now the judge, it's a new judge because the judge that overturned his conviction retired on the 31st of December. So the new judge has had his case since January. And he's been saying in July, August, September, October, 3 months. Each month he said, I'm going to give my final decision. And then when we come back, he have another lie. He says, I don't have all the paperwork. Or the last time, before this last date, he said that he was going to subpoena Dorothy Brown because he didn't have the records from 1993. So when we went last Wednesday, this past Wednesday, he said he got one box of the papers. But according to one of my son's lawyers, he said whenever they would go back into the judge's chamber, it was more than one box. It was at least 4. So, you know, it hurts to see how the system is today. And it's no justice at all. Whoever said that. It's no justice. And we have a chant that we usually say, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. When do we need some done? We need it now. And you know what? I wish we had CPAC. Woo. I wish we had CPAC. Because when my son was arrested in 1990, if we had CPAC, my son wouldn't be in jail. My son would not be in prison. But things need to change. They need to stop walking around with blindfolders on and ear stoppers in their ears like these things did not happen It happened. And it's still going on. It's not as much as it was back in the day, but it's still going on. And I blame the higher ups, like the mayor, the chief of police. I blame them because if you don't stop me from doing what I'm doing, you saying I'm giving you my permission. You can do whatever you want to do. If you see that young man, you think he did it, say he was coming at you. Shoot him down. That's not right. It's not right. And some changes need to be made. People get up and talk about what they are going to do in order to be a mayor. I'm going to make changes. Make them. Make them. Stop saying it. Make them. And you know what? It makes me angry to see the president and the governors of our cities and states and the mayors and the aldermen and whoever, if you're not fighting to get these men out of prison, and like I say, I'm not talking about just Gerald Reed. Gerald Reed is not alone. I want them all. All. And you know what? I got faith, and I believe in God. And I know God is going to set them men free. And you know what? When it gets started, they're going to sit back. Dang. All of them guys coming out of there. Because they shouldn't have never been locked up. That's wrong. If it was your family, how would you take it? You wouldn't like it. But they don't care because it's not theirs. So put yourself in our shoes and see what we are going through, because it's not nice. The things that we have to cherish and look at every day, talk to our family every day or every other day. And when they go to court on Tuesday, Gerald called me and said, Mama, they brought me the papers for me to sign for my bond. And the young lady told me that she had 2 more that she had to take papers to because they was getting out on Wednesday. So my son go to court Wednesday, right? And he done already signed the papers. And he think, oh, maybe I'll come home. Surprise, surprise, you are back in Cook County Jail. And, you know, I'm going to try to stop. It's some families that are here that we need to show recognition to these families. And if I don't pronounce your name properly, hold it to my head, not to my heart. I think it's Isaac Auden. Harriet Snoop Augustus. Dakota Bright. Paul Castaway. David Lenolin, I think it is. Lincoln, I'm sorry. Jamar Clark. Flint Former. Cordell Handy, Ronald Ronnie Man Johnson, Betty Jones, Danine Jones, if I'm not mistaken, Antonio LaGreer, Pierre Laurie, Bryant Quinones, thank you. Okay. Justin Teagan. Okay. Vernell Bing. I commend you families. Hang in there. Just a little bit longer, because your day is coming. Okay? Take my word for it. It's coming. Thank you all so much.
Make some noise one more time for Mr. Armando Shackelford. We need to do everything that we can to free not only Gerald Reed, but every single torture survivor that's behind bars. Free every single one of them. And we need to do our part to launch defense campaigns whenever us, activists, organizers, movement folk, are targeted by the FBI or the CIA. We need to be there and say, no, people have the right to organize, am I right? People have the right to fight for their freedom, am I right? So up next, I have the honor of inviting up, speaking of political prisoners, a Puerto Rican political prisoner by the name of Edwin Cortez. Make some noise, everyone.
Via Puerto Rico Libre. Free Puerto Rico now. I'm a Puerto Rican born and raised in the south side of Chicago. And all my life I've been involved in the community struggles for Black, Puerto Rican, Mexican, and Hispanic people on the south side of Chicago. I was at the University of Illinois, and we were actively involved in the University of Illinois with all our Latin American brothers. I was also involved with the Palestinian people's struggle. I was involved with the Eritreans who were fighting for independence against the Ethiopian government. And we were involved with the Iranian students who were fighting the fascist Shah in Iran and against the Savak secret police. I was arrested in 1983 and charged with seditious conspiracy, conspiring to overthrow the United States government. Ironically, Puerto Ricans have been the only people who have been accused of seditious conspiracy from 1930 to the time I got arrested in 1983. Puerto Ricans were the only ones charged with seditious conspiracy. And all of us, Albizu Campos in 1930, and the 5 nationalists in 1954, Oscar Collazo in 1950, and then a group of us in 1980, 81, and 83. And you can check out the statute on seditious conspiracy. It says conspiring to overthrow the lawful authority of the United States government in Puerto Rico. And our defense was that that authority is illegal, criminal, and colonial. And in Chicago, if you happen to take a tour of Chicago, you'll see the stark differences here in Chicago that we are living. You go to the south side of Chicago and see what we're living in the south side of Chicago and compare that to what we're living now in Humboldt Park, gentrification. We were in Broadway. We lived in Broadway. The first Puerto Ricans moved to Broadway. Now you won't find any. That's been totally gentrified. Puerto Ricans moved to the area of Lakeview, where the Cubs Park, and that was gentrified. Now we're moved to Humboldt Park, and Humboldt Park is being gentrified. So it would be a good experience for all of you to come and visit our communities and see the stark differences. In 1979, we had a conference in New York, and we were trying to establish a national database on police brutality. And that database, I don't know if it ever was done and what happened to it, but I think it's important to create a database and make known all the cases of police brutality all over the United States. And there were brutal killings of Mexicans in the Southwest that we had documented, Puerto Ricans in Humboldt Park. We had a riot in Humboldt Park. We had a riot in the south side of Chicago for a killing of a Puerto Rican by the racist Chicago police. So I applaud all of your efforts. We hope that you will continue supporting us. Puerto Rico was devastated by Hurricane Maria in 2017, and we are rebuilding. The Puerto Rican people have risen up on July 25th, which is the 122nd anniversary of our colonization. The people of Puerto Rico came out to the streets, and we ousted 3 governors. We had 3 governors in 6 days. So the power is in the people, and we have to be creative and build models of resistance. And I wish you all success. Free Puerto Rico now. Thank you.
Free Puerto Rico! Free Puerto Rico! Free Puerto Rico! Awesome, awesome. Let's give everyone one more round of applause. So our next speaker will be reading a statement from Native Lives Matter, Minneapolis. Everyone give Lyndon Galboy, give Lyndon a round of applause.
Hey everyone, I'm going to be reading a statement that was sent by the Gabe Black Elk and Tonya of Native Lives Matter. They were unable to be here tonight. So it's in the first person. So imagine that I am Gabe Black Elk. So we thank the Alliance for inviting us to the National Refounding. We are sorry to say we cannot make the trip, but we do stand in solidarity from our Justice for Paul Castaway family, just as the American Indian movement did in 1973 at the original founding of the Alliance. The National Alliance united AIM and other national liberation movements at a time when the people's movements were under attack. Again, we prepare to carry on the fight to free them all. And Gabe says we have to chant 3 times. Free them all! Free them all! Free them all! Them all! There are many warriors like Leonard Peltier and my cousin Red Fawn and my relatives from AIM in Colorado imprisoned after the uprisings, for example, at Wounded Knee, at Standing Rock, and those are just a few. We also understand the importance of unifying families, activists, and all nations to bring an end to police brutality in our communities. As one of the organizers of Native Lives Matter and a state rep for Families United for Justice, we hold our fist up high in solidarity. For we have nothing to lose but our chains. All right? And we're going to close with a chant 3 times. Indict, convict, send those killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. Indict, convict, send those killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. Indict, convict, send those killer cops to jail. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. All right, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Free them all! Free them all! Free them all! Free them all! All right, give them one more round of applause. Shout out to Native Lives Matter. Shout out to the indigenous people. Our next speaker, representing USPCN in Chicago. They do great work in the community. Let's everybody give a round of applause for Nezek Sankari.
Good evening. Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, perfect. I am Nazek Sankari, a member of the Chicago chapter of the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. I am honored to be here tonight with everyone as we gather to celebrate the refounding of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. That's right. The epitome of Black and Palestinian solidarity is embodied in the relationship between the Alliance and our chapter of USPCN. The Alliance was our most dedicated ally and partner during the Rasmiya Defense Committee work. Members of the Alliance consistently attend and have spoken at every Palestinian support rally and Palestinian political prisoner solidarity event. They have joined us at each and every protest of congressional representatives who support Israeli crimes against Palestinian people. The Alliance shows its consistent solidarity by supporting our own demands for liberation, which include the end to Zionist Israeli occupation and colonization for all Palestinian and Arab lands, the right of return for all Palestinian refugees and their descendants, and self-determination and liberation for the Palestinian people. We proudly stood side by side with the Alliance and other Black liberation forces to protest and demand that killer cop Jason Van Dyke be convicted of murdering Laquan McDonald. That's right. And we stand together to demand justice for all the Black and Latinx folks who have been killed or are survivors of torture at the hands of the vicious Chicago police. We all know that the Alliance is the main police accountability force in Chicago. It is at the forefront of the necessary and critical work of demanding the democratic community control of the police of our city, because we will not stand idly by as CPD terrorizes our communities. The Civilian Police Accountability Council has already set the stage for 5 other cities across the US that are demanding community control of the police. When this law passes, and I do mean when, not if, it will be a revolutionary moment in this country's history. We pledge our unequivocal support for CPAC and for the refounding of the National Alliance. We know and believe that Black liberation in the US will lead to liberation for all. Thank you.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. All right, y'all, make some noise one more time. So up next, I would like to invite up a brother from the New Jericho movement. Y'all know about the New Jericho movement? All right, Masai Ehehozi. Make some noise for Masai. Oh, here he comes. Make some noise, y'all.
Assalamu alaikum and revolutionary greetings. I pray that Allah guards my heart and guides my tongue in all I'm about to say. I should point out, we was wondering when we saw the New Jericho movement what that is. I'm actually with the Jericho National Jericho movement for recognition and amnesty and release for political prisoners and POWs held within the confines of the U.S. And I should also say, while I'm here, I am first of all a Muslim, and I'm among those Muslims who believe there's our obligation to fight against oppression, all forms of oppression. I'm a former Black Liberation Army prisoner of war captured in 1975, and along with my co-defendant, we declared that we were citizens of the Republic of New Africa and that we were subject to the Geneva Convention, and the U.S. government had no jurisdiction of us. I'm a long-time involvement in the New African Independence Movement. That's a movement that seeks independence and land for the Republic of New Africa, a socialist Republic of New Africa. And I'm in a workshop tomorrow, and I hope y'all can come because I'm trying to keep within the confines of this session right now. I should say, along with us speaking about prisoners of war and political prisoners in general, someone pointed out that I really need to speak about, and I agree, the condition of Muslims who are inside the U.S. prisons, those who are in general and also those who are political prisoners and prisoners of war. I think while some folks here touched on some things, I don't think you know just how deep the situation is or how bad the repression are. There's units throughout the United States. There's control units, special management units, and Muslims have been in there, well, particularly since September 11th. But even before that, there's Muslims who have been in them units. And when I say Muslims, I think sometimes folks have a tendency, they think about Arabs, they think about everyone else, but not the fact that, thank you. Not the fact that there's bodies of Muslims here who follow the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. We're real Muslims and we do exist. Again, we hope to get into that tomorrow. And while I am primarily here at Jericho, I shall also say that I am among those who consider themselves to be abolitionists for the abolishment of the prison industrial complex. And I know Andrew's going to speak first, Angela's going to be speaking tonight. When Angela and them raised it and did what they did in 1998, several of us on the East Coast asked what could we do to follow it up. They actually sent some people out there to the East Coast, and that's after we did our national conference, after we did our East Coast conference, we decided that we really needed to get that thing tight and develop a national organization to work for the abolishment of the PIC. And I think I need to say that, and I will say some more later, because a lot of times folks have a hard time understanding what abolishment actually means. We ain't talking about reforming it or nothing like that. The complete and total abolishment of the prison industrial complex. Something else, and I will be touching on tomorrow, I'm also part of what's called the National Community, or Al-Umma. Was led by Imam Jamil Amin. Some of y'all might, if you're old enough to remember him, as H. Rap Brown. He's currently in federal custody, and we're working to get him out. More closer to home, I'm actually part of a body called Masjid Al-Kaaba, which is actually based here in Chicago. My imam is actually, or you might know him as Jeff Ford. He's been sitting in Florence, Colorado for so many years, it ain't funny, so he's one of the ones I have to work on, and I will particularly talk about him. A brother named Malmeen Kabal, who actually represents some of the worst treatment you can get. And while we was talking about different charges that people have, Malmeen actually is one of the ones they have charged supposedly for wanting to commit terrorist acts for Libya, which again is another story I can get into tomorrow. And I have to acknowledge also that a lot of these positions came from working with the American Friends Service Committee Criminal Justice Program. I was there for about 10 years in a project called Prison Watch, which monitored the abuse and torture within U.S. prisons and jail, which is where a lot of the experiences that we have dealing with control units come from in the United States. And because I am down to 30 minutes, I will get off here, but I will tell y'all, please come to the workshop tomorrow if you can. And also we have some material out front on the Jericho table, both with the Jericho movement and also with critical resistance. Assalamu alaikum, free the land.
So y'all ready for some culture or what? All right. So I would like to invite up Tari Hurd. Tari is going to be performing. Make some noise. It's a long walk, y'all. Let's keep it going.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love y'all. So grateful. Okay. So, first I would just like to start off with the Organization of Black Students at the University of Chicago stands in support and full solidarity with the demands and action of the international liberation of all oppressed minority groups, domestic and abroad. But I just want to note that all of us that belong in this room, that belong here with us, are not physically present with us. So let's just honor them in a moment, their spirits. There are dead subjects that are never supposed to be brought up. There are uncomfortable conversations that are never supposed to be had. Topics buried like bodies, swept under the rug like court cases, hung up like bodies. Dead subjects that lead to dead people. People seen as subjects. Classrooms crafted. Markers? No. Targets marked. Classrooms? No projects. Actually, yes. Projects. The projects. Dead subjects subjected to dead homes, dead schools, and dead communities. People presumed dead before their pulses were checked. But since the EMT don't want to hashtag let us breathe, then we call BYP because we are what we need. We migrate. We create murals to absorb the trauma on the streets. Jazz pacifies our blues. We find beauty in the broken bricks built off bondage in this country. I honor your survival stories. told in the struggle against systematic oppression. Bless your comfort, revel in your rest. Although justice evades our streets, not current killings, kidnappings, or even old Katrinas can curb our resilience. We visit the dead. We pour up for the dead. We march for the dead. And every other day we live and we give life. Be encouraged by the cultures of our complexions, the beauty that we brandish, and the royal priesthood that we personify. We exude an untouchable, civilization-forming form of confidence. It cascades down our shoulders. We have God-given cultural crowns, crowns that enhance and strengthen us, and skin that inspires the shaping of societies. So thank you. Thank you, genuinely. Thank you for your love, your passion, your presence, resilience, care, and courage. Quilted, we gather, bonded by blood. We are here exchanging power, spirits unconfined, glowing, powerful, fiery, and free, endowed with the buoyancy of ancestral love. Like a tide, what we drop in here will wash away all confinement, all walls. Crayola can't catch or describe the power of our color, presence, and hues. So when you all leave this powerful space, when you return to the world, release your sighs. Know the power of your protest, crack what has been constructed. And most of all, take care. Never concede your presence. Be as bold as you are in here. The glory is within you, every single one of you. Thank you.
Give her one more round of applause. One more round of applause. When Black lives are under attack, what do we do? When Black lives are under attack, what do we do? When Black lives are under attack, what do we do? 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 Awesome, awesome. Thank y'all, thank y'all. So our next speaker is an incredible activist here locally in Chicago. Everyone knows her name. She's part of the Black Lives Matter here in Chicago. Everyone give a round of applause to Ms. Aislinn Pulley.
How y'all feeling tonight? Whew, y'all are really beautiful. I want to give honor to some of the folks who are not here right now, as well as some of the folks that have been holding us down. We have Gerald Reed's mom here, Armanda Shackelford. And what happened on Wednesday and what continues to happen in his case is an atrocity. We need every single person that's in here to sign the petition to demand the immediate release of Gerald Reed. So Big Tree, where are you? All right, can y'all just look at Big Tree? Raise your hand. We need y'all to sign the petition, so go and find Big Tree after this, so that we can get everyone's names down. I also want to kind of take a minute to remember why we're in Chicago. A lot is going on in this city, and a lot has been done in this city. We heard from the GOAT, Stacey Davis Gates, earlier, who helped situate us in the historic SEIU CTU win that just happened. Chicago is where the first charter school strikes happened in this country. Chicago is the city that successfully kicked out our state's attorney, Anita Alvarez. And we followed that up by successfully kicking out Rahm Emanuel. We unseated a decades-long judge here, Judge Cochran, from the bench, the first time that has ever happened in this city. We forced Dante Servin, the murderous CPD cop who killed Rekia Boyd, to resign. Dante Servin tried to get his record expunged. And just this week, we were able to successfully prevent that from happening. Chicago is where we recently elected 6 alder people who identify as socialists to our city council. We have the most socialist identified city council people in the country right now. So when the reports about how historic this election was omit that and talk about our cop mayor instead, set them straight. That is the victory. We also have, for the first time, convicted a white on-duty police officer for murdering a black person in the history of this city. In addition to all of those things, young black organizers forced the reopening, the reestablishment of a Trauma One center on the South Side. And led by Angela Davis and Critical Resistance, as mentioned earlier, Chicago has made important contributions to the fight for abolition. Chicago won a historic reparations ordinance in 2015. This is the first ordinance of its kind in this country that provides not only financial redress for survivors of police torture, but mandated the creation of a curriculum to be taught in all Chicago public schools about that history. In addition, the ordinance provided free access to all of the Chicago city colleges for not just the survivors, but for their family members and extended family members. The ordinance also called for the creation of a public memorial, which is important because what torture attempts to do is to erase and invisibilize. And a public memorial makes visible and tangible what was supposed to be erased and systemically ignored and denied real and permanent. That is a victory that it was won. We should celebrate that. But the fight is not over because the memorial has not been made. Rahm Emanuel denied the funding to establish the public memorial. Lori Lightfoot, to date, has not responded to the demand to create and fund the public memorial. Right. So our work is not done. The promise of reparations has not yet been fulfilled. What the reparations ordinance also called for was the creation of a center located on the South Side to treat the psychological effects of torture. That center is the Chicago Torture Justice Center. It is the first, and it is currently the only center in the whole United States dedicated to survivors of domestic torture. The city rejected our proposal for full funding and only gave us half of that funding. So while we have these historic victories, we need to defend them because they can easily be taken away. And what the city said off the record, and I'm saying this off the record, but I'm also looking at some of our city council folks who are in here, so y'all know. They said to us that the reparations ordinance did not mandate any funding beyond what it has already done. So there's an implicit threat there. So we need to prepare to defend these victories and make sure that they remain permanent. Because as we heard, we still have torture survivors incarcerated right now. And they need to be freed, all of them. And the names that we know are a tip of the iceberg of what the reality is. We have 120 names from John Burge. John Burge trained tons of detectives under him. They were known as the Midnight Crew. That was only one of the crews. They are still on the force. One of them was a part of the Laquan McDonald assassination. So we can see that connection, that lineage is alive and well, and it's in the heart of that torture remains alive and well right now. So when they talk about the era of Burge, don't let them use that language, because the torture continues to happen. And we have tons and tons of survivors who don't yet know that they also are connected to Burge and his henchmen. What we do have here today and this weekend are survivors who are going to be here and sharing their stories. And I want to make some of them present, both who are physically here, some who remain incarcerated. Latanya Jennifer Sublet is a woman torture survivor. We never hear about the women torture survivors. There are women torture survivors. She will be here. Stanley Howard, he is not here. He was one of the Death Row 10 whose fight helped enable the moratorium on the death penalty to be put in place in Illinois. His wife, Michelle, is here. Michelle, where are you? There she is. Carl Williams remains incarcerated. His wife is here. Talia, raise your hand. And we have Anthony Holmes and Gregory Banks and Mark Clements. We have Bertha Escamilla, who's a mom of a torture survivor who's here. Bertha, raise your hand. We have Regina, who is here. Regina, where are you? Right over there, raise your hand. So what we know, is that Marvin Reeves back there? Marvin is a torture survivor. So what we know empirically is that when we fight, we win. What we also know is that we are not yet done fighting, because right now we have Homan Square. Homan Square disappeared over 7,000 people between 2004 and 2012. We know that torture is not over in this city. We know that torture is not an aberration, but is the norm. So that 120 names is not the real number. And the work that we have to do is to end torture completely in this city and across this country. And what that means is that we have to free all the prisoners, we have to open all the cages, and we have to defund all the police departments. So while we are here and we are standing in the victory of the struggles and the fights that brought us here and that have changed the landscape to where the only viable option for a mayor in this city happened to be a black queer woman, we have a long way to go. So this is just the beginning, and we ain't done. Our fight ain't even been started. It's getting started, and we gonna win, because when we fight, we win.
When we fight, we win. When we fight, when we fight, when we fight. Make some noise if you're ready to fight. All right, y'all, before I invite up the next speaker, I just want to say, for those who pledge money and want to pay using a credit card, we have Grace Pertino right here, wave. She has a swiper that you can use. You can also make your payments online, naarpr.org. You can make a donation. So up next, I would like to invite up Jess Sundin from the committee. Ooh, it sounds like you already know who she is. She's from the Committee to Stop FBI Repression. Make some noise.
Thank you, Jasmine. Hello, Chicago. I'm a little small, well, this way anyway. Greetings and solidarity from the city of Jamar Clark, Minneapolis. From the state that took the lives of Justin Teigen and Isaac Aiden and Brian Quinones and so many others. I come to you, first of all, so thankful to be here with you. And so thankful that I work with the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar that was able to mobilize people to come out and be here today. That's not actually my topic today. See, I'm going to tell like an old story. Nine years ago, one morning, my family had a very rude awakening. Early morning raid by the FBI. They came armed with battering rams, warrants to search our homes for evidence of so-called material support to foreign terrorists, and subpoenas ordering my wife and I to appear before a grand jury here in your city, in Chicago. Well, we came to Chicago, but we didn't go to that grand jury. But you know, we learned while the FBI was still in our house that actually dozens of agents were at the doors of activists and comrades across the country, including here in Chicago. We were from many mass movements, including the anti-war and international solidarity movement, the Palestinian liberation movement. We were trade unionists, and some of us were members of Freedom Road Socialist Organization. In total, 23 of us were targeted in that operation, and out of our case, they went on to attack Carlos Montes and Resmia Ode, who you heard from earlier this evening. But even before the agents left our home, we knew that we were not going to cooperate with that grand jury. We did refuse to help the government destroy our movements or those we worked in solidarity with in Palestine or Colombia or anywhere else. We knew when we made that decision that our refusal could send us to prison, and as it had in fact many times before, many people before us, many people in this city with the same prosecutor behind their cases. But we also knew that like so many who had come before us, our only defense was solidarity. I want to give a shout out to my fellow grand jury resistors, some of whom are here tonight. You can shout now if y'all want to a whole bunch of us are here right now. But I also want to thank many of you are folks who stood to defend us. And I thank you because it was not only our refusal to testify, but your refusal to let them take us that is the reason that I am here today. I absolutely believe I owe my freedom to this movement, to these movements. And the government absolutely failed in its attempt to silence us. And instead, we grew stronger. So we're here today on this truly historic occasion, and we're doubling down. Together, we are refounding the National Alliance as a powerful weapon to defend all of our movements and our communities like never before. Speaking for the Committee to Stop FBI Repression, I say we are with you for the long haul to confront racist and political repression and racist police terror as long as it exists in this country. So I'm gonna end quick because I know there's other people you're kind of interested in hearing from, but let's say it real loud so they can hear us. Ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop.
Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people because the power of the people don't stop.
Give it up for Jess Sundin, everyone. All right, so we are almost to Angela's keynote address. Make some noise if you're excited to see Angela Davis. Freaking amazing. Okay, so CPAC, as you all may know, is an ordinance in the Chicago City Council. And we, in total, have 19 aldermen who have signed on to CPAC. And we have a couple of them here in the room tonight. So I want to invite up Alderman Carlos Rosa, the 35th Ward, the sponsor of CPAC and the People's Alderman, to say some words. Make some noise for Carlos Rosa.
Good evening, sisters and brothers, and siblings, and comrades and friends. You know, my other chief co-sponsor here, Jeanette Taylor of the 20th Ward, unfortunately, she had to step out this evening. But I just want to say that this is a tremendous, tremendous night here in the city of Chicago. Because people are waking up across this country. And because the people here in this room recognize that at the same time that we wake up, there's people trying to keep us down. That at the same time that we open our eyes, there are people desperately trying to keep them closed. And that the only way that we are going to succeed in keeping our eyes open, keeping our movement bright and sprite, I got to work out a little bit, maybe a little bit, but is if we stand in solidarity together against racism, against oppression and repression in all forms. So you see, I'm not your regular type of politician because I understand that the change we're trying to make, it doesn't happen by me shaking hands with some rich billionaire. It doesn't happen with me becoming golf buddies with some rich SOB. It happens when the people in this room, when the people across this country, when trade unionists and activists and black folks and white folks and Asian folks and Arab folks and Jewish folks and gay folks and straight folks and trans folks raise their fists up in solidarity together and demand the change that we so desperately need. So when the Alliance came to me as a little tiny baby alderman in my first term and said, Carlos, will you sign on to CPAC? I said, absolutely, yes, I will stand with you as you demand justice. And when they said, Carlos, will you introduce this ordinance so that we can have this legislative fight on the floor of the city council? I said, absolutely, yes. Let's take our fight from the streets into the halls of power. And when the aldermen in that city hall refused to listen to us, when they refused to stand with us, we went out there and we knocked doors and we sent a ton of them packing. And so it was this movement for CPAC, this demand for community control of the police, this demand for democracy to have people power in the halls of the city of Chicago that led to the election of 6 socialists to join me on that city council. It is so beautiful to see this multiracial working class movement coming together. It is so beautiful. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of my queer Latinx heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because this is the movement. This is the movement that's going to get immigrant kids out of jails, that's going to get black folks out of jails, that's going to abolish this unjust, racist, oppressive system and set all of us free. Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Make some noise for Carlos Rosa. And let me just say something, okay? Because we know there are a couple of other ordinances for police accountability, right? But we know that CPAC is a movement, right? There's no other ordinance for police accountability that has 800 people at the CTU hall. There's no other ordinance for police accountability that has 60,000 supporters, black people, brown people, a unified movement in the city fighting for community control of the police. So that way, we can begin to end police crimes and leave them behind in history. Is that right? So up next, I would like to invite up my dear mentor, Frank Chapman. Make some noise for Frank.
Okay, I got an old slogan for you. Of course, I'm not old, I just got an old slogan. All power to the people. All power to the people. Every goddamn bit of it, all power to the people. Okay, we came here to fight. I'm gonna be brief. I'm gonna announce it, and then I'm not gonna make a long speech. Because that's usually what happens, right? So good evening, comrades. Good evening, freedom fighters. Good evening to every one of you. I'm cutting the rest of this paragraph. We know why we have come here tonight. We're here because we all know and realize that we have come to the point when we have to make a renewed and powerful commitment to overturn the regime of racist and political repression perpetrated against our people by those outlaws who currently occupy the White House and their cohorts in Chicago, in St. Louis, in Minnesota, Baltimore, D.C. You know, it's over 100 cities represented here. Every day we hear about impeachment, about Trump's messing with the enemy abroad to steal an election at home. We do not hear about impeaching Trump for ordering thousands of immigrants into detention camps and caging children. We do not hear one word about impeaching Trump for his support of white supremacist terrorists. The law says the president can be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, while obviously this doesn't include telling over 10,000 lies while in the Oval Office or implementing policies whose consequences mean the death of children and separation of families. Trump ought to be impeached not just for high crimes and misdemeanors or obstruction of justice, but for crimes against humanity. Under the banner of white supremacy, misogyny, and homophobia, he ought to be impeached for making himself the commander-in-chief of the Klan and the Nazis and all the white supremacist scum of the land. But we must caution ourselves not to think that justice is achieved through the prosecution of one person, even if that person is guilty of crimes against humanity. Eliminate that paragraph. Let me go back to 1619, the Dutch man of war. That was a slave ship that brought my people to this land to labor. Let me remind you that 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 slave vessel did not come into the New York harbor passing the Statue of Liberty on its way to Ellis Island. No, they brought us here in chains, and our ancestors in the belly of those ships came here yearning to be free from those chains. Let us be clear. The crimes of the system predates Donald Trump. The crimes of genocide, expropriation, and enslavement of the indigenous population, of turning Africa into a warren, of a commercial war zone for the hunting down and selling into bondage of untold millions, was not started by Donald Trump. These are crimes that echo down through the centuries, going back 400 years. These are crimes legalized in the Constitution, enshrined in monuments, and carved into mountains by those who enslaved us. These are the crimes that render your American dream a nightmare. And these are the crimes that weigh down upon us today in the form of police terror, mass incarceration, and murder and internment on the Mexican border. We are living, fighting, and dying in this moment of history, dealing with this legacy of bondage, finishing the unfinished revolution started by the indigenous people defending their land, by the Africans on those slave ships, and by the millions of workers who came and still come to this conquered land yearning to be free. We have come here tonight to reaffirm and defend our revolutionary traditions. We come here tonight to say that we're not only the hope and the dream of the slave, we are the defenders of the revolution that will realize these hopes and dreams. We did not call you to this refounding conference of the National Alliance Against Race and Political Repression to commemorate or celebrate what we did 46 years ago. We called you here to join us in rededicating ourselves to defend the inalienable democratic right of our people, of oppressed people and workers, to rise up and overthrow their oppression in this present moment of history. We called you here to join us in consolidating and uniting all the pockets of resistance to police tyranny everywhere it exists in the United States of North America, and to inscribe on our banners community control of the police. We called you here to join us in renewing and taking to a new level or to new heights the struggle to free all political prisoners and the wrongfully convicted. We called you here because we share the vision of many of you to abolish the police and prisons and see it as part of the larger vision, changing and abolishing governments that enslave and oppress us. Ending racist and political repression is our central task in this moment of history. There can be no better world in birth without the carrying out of this task. This conference provides an historic opportunity for our movement to come together in a broad united front to defend and advance the struggle for democracy based on an inalienable democratic right of the oppressed and the working class to organize and fight for radical systemic change. We are not fighting for some abstract we the people democracy. We are fighting for a democracy that recognizes our democratic right to rebel and overthrow the powers that be. All right, to save time, Dr. Barbara Ransby, this is to save time. You all know Barbara, but I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then Angela.
Now, how did I get to go between Frank Chapman and Angela Davis? I don't know. I'm going to be very brief. It's wonderful to look out at this crowd this evening, and I think we have to acknowledge, it's wonderful to be in the house of CTU, our social justice, racial justice union, Stacey Davis Gates, Jennifer Johnson, wonderful, strong black women leaders of this union, and we're happy to be a part of this family. It is always a pleasure and an honor to introduce my friend, comrade, and sister Angela Davis. Angela Davis is someone who really does not need an introduction. Y'all know who she is? All right. But I'm up here because when Frank Chapman gives an assignment, I usually try to take it. The purpose of this three-day gathering is to revive the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. Well, our sister Angela Davis knows a little something about racism and about political repression. Angela grew up in a part of the country, Birmingham, Alabama, that was so racist that one of the neighborhoods was called Dynamite Hill because of the white terrorism of the KKK and other such groups. That was Angela Davis's hometown. Her family knew two of the black girls who were blown up in the 16th Street Baptist Church in 1963. So she knew racism before she had a sophisticated analysis of what it meant. But she knew something else. She knew she was the daughter of Miss Sally Davis, a freedom fighter in her own right. She knew that Birmingham was not only the site of bombings and racist attacks, but it was also the site of resistance and activism led by people like the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, a militant freedom fighter and black communist in the 1930s. She was produced by a community of activists that stretched from Birmingham to Brooklyn. So as a child and a young adult, she knew racism, and soon she would know political repression as well. Many people came to know the name Angela Davis based on events in the late 1970s that propelled her into national and international attention. She was unfairly implicated in a shooting in a California courtroom in which young Jonathan Jackson, a 17-year-old brother of political activist and prisoner George Jackson, used a gun that was registered to Angela. This was the state's opportunity to try to put her away, or so they thought. Fearing that she would not get a fair trial, Angela went underground and was placed on the FBI's most wanted list. She was eventually captured and tried, and the force of an international Free Angela movement forced the state to release her. People all over the world came to know the name of Angela Davis, but that was nearly 50 years ago, and I think it's safe to say that Angela Davis has spent every year of every decade since that paying back the freedom fighters all over the world who fought for her release. And it is not a personal debt or an individual debt, it is a political debt. She has paid us back as a brilliant writer and thinker and theorist. She has paid us back with her clarity on racial capitalism and heteropatriarchy and white supremacy and imperialism. The author and editor of almost a dozen books, she has paid us back also as an activist, an organizer, a collaborator, a bridge builder, and a radical internationalist. She has shown up for the Palestinians, she has shown up for Puerto Rico, she has shown up for indigenous folks and queer folks and for incarcerated people. And what we owe her as a freedom fighter and visionary, as an unrelenting feminist and anti-capitalist, is truly priceless. So join me in giving Angela Y. Davis a warm Chicago welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Barbara. And good evening. It's really wonderful to be here this evening. And I'd like to thank the organizers of this conference, founding the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, for inviting me to share this experience with you this evening. It's really energizing to be in this space here in the Chicago Teachers Union Hall. Thank you, Stacey Davis Gates and the Chicago Teachers Union, for your
militancy, for your commitment, for your perseverance. It was also really wonderful to hear from Rasmia O'Day, who really belongs in this hall today. 46 years ago, we founded the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression here in the city of Chicago. At that time, it was crystal clear that if we did not create a broad alliance of organizations and individuals dedicated to defending movements struggling for progressive and radical change, the resources of existing organizations would be consumed by lawyers' fees and by campaigns to defend those who had been targeted by state repression. Before we do anything else, I want us to pay tribute to the person whose political and organizational vision led to the creation of the Alliance. And I'm referring to Charlene Mitchell. And as the head of the National United Committee to Free Angela Davis and all political prisoners, she was the one who first conceptualized the kind of defense organization that would generate the resources necessary to protect those who were targeted by political repression, and at the same time to recognize and contest the ways in which state apparatuses were normalizing racist repression. Let me also recognize the ongoing legacy of some of the leaders of the Chicago Alliance, and I'm referring to Josephine Wyatt and Clarice Dunham, who were dedicated Alliance leaders until their death. And I also, of course, acknowledge the work that Frank Chapman has done, Ted Pearson, Mildred Williamson. I see Sandra Lowe in the audience and many others here in Chicago. I see in terms of the National Alliance, and Mitchell is somewhere in the house. I see Cormanita Marr, and I see Linda Jackson, who I've seen in many years. Before I address the, is there something wrong with the, what's going on with the microphone? Okay. Oh, you do? Okay, I thought it was going in and out.
Check.
Okay. Are you sure this one is working? I think the other one was working better. Here, give me the other one back. Okay. So, before I address the overarching questions I've been asked to speak to, why we need such an organization today, I want to linger a bit longer in the years that constituted the historical precedent for this gathering. And first of all, I want to say thank you once more to all of those who were involved in the campaign to free me from the repressive hold of the state almost a half century ago. I can't believe it's been almost 50 years. And you should know that when I was arrested, I had about $600 in the bank, which was about enough to pay my rent of the next month. Had it been up to me as an individual, I never would have been able to hire a lawyer. But very quickly, a legal defense fund was created with ties to many artists. And I'm remembering, I know I'm going to forget many names, but Marvell Cook, for example, Ossie Davis was the head of the Legal Defense Committee. The National Conference of Black Lawyers, which I understand is also being revived. Am I right? And there were lawyers who were members of the Communist Party, and lawyers from the National Lawyers Guild, and from the Center for Constitutional Rights, and the ACLU. But of course, the heart of the campaign consisted of people from every walk of life, working class people, especially union members, academics and students, and fraternity and sorority members. To this day, I am claimed both by the Deltas and the AKAs. And they both tirelessly worked on the campaign for my freedom. People from churches and synagogues and mosques within the Presbyterian Church, people are still talking about the controversy surrounding the $10,000 the church donated to the Legal Defense Fund. And then, of course, there was the international dimension of the campaign, which allows us to recall how important it was to have access to structures of internationalism, such as those that emanated at that time from communist parties all over the world. From the time I was first arrested in New York and held in the Women's House of Detention in Greenwich Village, I could look around and see countless numbers of women who did not have the kind of support networks that quickly developed around my case. And I felt that as long as the campaign focused exclusively on me, we would not be fulfilling our revolutionary mandate. And I could not myself feel comfortable being the sole beneficiary of this phenomenal campaign. And at some point, there was a shift and a change of name from the National United Committee to Free Angela Davis to the National United Committee to Free Angela Davis and all political prisoners. And of course, then that led to the creation of the Alliance. But before the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression was formally created in May of 1973, we tried to guarantee that our alliance would acknowledge the various and diverse ways in which state repression was being inflicted on different movements. It was, of course, in the early 70s. It was the aftermath of the assassination of Dr. King. There were so many Black movements under attack. And we chose to focus on the Attica brothers. We chose to give special attention to North Carolina. It seems like when I turn in this direction, when I turn to the right, my voice disappears. But I also want to recall that there was a federal assault on organized indigenous resistance at Wounded Knee. And so in preparation for the founding of the Alliance, a few of us constituted a delegation and went to Wounded Knee. And as a matter of fact, Clyde Bellecour, one of the founders of the American Indian movement, became a co-chair of the alliance. And then, of course, there was the Chicano Latino movement. I can think about Los Siete de la Raza in California, and Carlos Feliciano from the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, Lolita Lebron and Rafael Cancel Miranda and the Puerto Rican Nationalists. There was also Nelson Mandela. We were very insistent on the multiracial character of the organization and recognized that we could not move forward in the struggle against racism without acknowledging the importance of white people learning how to accept black and brown leadership. A number of new issues were emerging at that time. The question of political prisoners. Who constituted a political prisoner? Our recognition that political prisoners could not be separated from the political use of the prison as an instrument of racism, what we would today call structural racism. And of course, George Jackson and others who were incarcerated at the time assisted us to develop this analysis. We had to learn how to link various modes of repression, which we were able to see very clearly in the state of North Carolina, which had more political prisoners than any other state in the country, more people on death row. We saw the beginnings of control centers, behavior modification centers, the open face of the Ku Klux Klan, cases like the case of Joanne Little, that assisted us to understand how important it was to deal with gender violence, sexual violence, violence against women. Marie Hill, who was 15 years old when she was tried and sentenced to death in 1968 on the basis of a coerced confession. Incidentally, last year, I was in Durham, North Carolina at Duke, and Marie Hill was in the audience. And she said that was the most wonderful night of her life because, I talked about the case, and it sounded as if it was a case that was not going to end victoriously, but she was there and committed herself amidst all of the people who were there to continuing the struggle. Since that period of the late 60s and early 70s, we have developed new approaches, more elucidating vocabularies, more revealing analysis. And thanks to feminist scholars and organizers, we've begun to understand more clearly connections and relationalities and intersectionalities. And I think that this is the theme around which I want to craft the remainder of my remarks. I don't, oh, you're not even showing me how much time I have. Okay. We have learned from feminist theories and practices that all the women are not white, that all of the blacks are not men, that we cannot simply call for gender justice if we do not also include racial justice, economic justice. We have learned that heteropatriarchy saturates every aspect of our lives. And we've learned that we must not be afraid, whether we are women, non-binary people, men, we should not be afraid to identify it and challenge it. So it means that we have to develop habits of perception and habits of analysis that acknowledge the inadequacies of the conceptual tools on which we are compelled to rely. Racial and economic hierarchies often prevent us from understanding how we can most effectively unite and move forward. And with respect to women's movements, the question to ask, if one woman moves forward but leaves everyone else behind, is this really a blow for women's equality? So we have to beware of these metaphors. What is it called? Shattering the glass ceiling, or glass ceiling feminism. This historical moment is defined both by the upsurge in movements, especially feminist, queer, Black, trans, disabled movements, climate justice movements, Palestinian solidarity, immigrant rights activism, and of course, also movements against state racism and repression. The notion of a defense organization is not very different from what we were attempting to create 45 years ago, or the Civil Rights Congress that was founded in 1946 as a defense organization, which was involved in cases like the Martinville 7 in Virginia, Willie McGee in Mississippi, Rosalie Ingram in Georgia. But just as the National Alliance could not simply replicate the Civil Rights Congress because times had changed, conditions were different, a 21st century defense organization cannot simply replicate the 20th century version. In the original work of the Alliance, we focused on getting people out of prison, people like Frank Chapman and Reverend Ben Chavis and the Wilmington 10. We called for prisoners' rights, but we were just beginning to understand the meaning of prison abolition. Of course, today we have to continue to get people out of jail and to call for decarceration, but at the same time, we have to make very explicit calls for the abolition of the prison entirely. In our work then against racist police violence, we call for control of the police. As a matter of fact, control, community control of the police as opposed to police review commissions. And here in Chicago, of course, you have been working on the Police Accountability Council, and you're leading the way in that respect. It is important, in the meantime, to recognize that we have acquired new insights about how to address state repressive apparatuses, such as the prison, and the police. The questions we face today are different. As prisons and police become increasingly more repressive, we today recognize the extent to which they bear the evidence of the impact of militarization, that reflects strategies of the so-called war on terror within local police departments. The fact that so many local police departments have been trained by the Israeli government means that solidarity with Palestine is also a central element of our anti-police work. In general, we might say that we have acquired more complex approaches to issues of repression that refuse to go away. Feminist approaches lead us to insist on connections that we did not necessarily recognize in the past, including the way racism and repression are themselves gendered. And this does not simply mean that we focus on women, which we should, or trans and non-binary people, which we should, but we should also recognize the ways in which policing and prison structures are themselves gendered. We did not necessarily realize 4 decades ago the extent to which policing becomes especially dangerous and often fatal when it is directed at intellectually or psychiatrically disabled people. We did not necessarily understand the extent to which anti-immigrant repression, including ICE and all of the, I was saying that detention facilities that are often private prisons, and they are deeply linked to other apparatuses of repression. We did not necessarily understand how important it is to challenge carceral feminism and to propose new ways of dealing with the most pandemic forms of violence in the world, sexual violence and gender violence. And I should say that even though impulsively we are all happy when we hear that a police officer has been convicted, we have to also ask ourselves whether we are not thinking about different modes of justice, whether we should not also be thinking about ways of addressing existing problems that do not necessarily rely on the police and on prisons. Internationalist approaches, in the absence of the kind of communist internationalism we once knew, these approaches are also a major challenge. So how can we actively support struggles in Palestine, in Rojava, and other Kurdish struggles in Kashmir, in Chile? We have a great deal to learn from Brazil and their efforts to push back the repression that is a sign of the Bolsonaro regime. And I should say we should ask ourselves how we can support those who are determined to bring anti-racism and feminism and socialism and climate justice and democracy to Brazil in the spirit of Marielle Franco. And of course, considering the situation in the Philippines, and I see there's some really energetic members of the delegation from Filipino struggles. And let's not forget that when we talk about the occupant here, and you know what I mean when I say the occupant, right? Because, you know, naming is a powerful mode. So by withholding the name, we withhold the power. And as a matter of fact, in Brazil, instead of referring to the person I just referred to by name, they often say Ocasio, which is like the thing. But these are just a few of the questions confronting this new organization and confronting all of us who see ourselves as participants in political movements to push the planet in a progressive direction, and especially now to overturn and repair the damage wrought by the current reactionary government, and finally to reset our freedom compass. Thank you very much.
Now give it up one more time for Angela Davis. Freedom fighter. All right, y'all. I want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. This means that the conference to refound the National Alliance is officially kicked off. Make some noise. So we got to get out of this hall, but before we go, y'all don't have to go home, but y'all got to get out of the hall. I figured we could wrap up with one chant. Does that sound good? All right. Everybody put your fist up. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love one another and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love one another and protect